To find out more about the visit and Tokyo's response to China's live-fire drills, during which missiles landed in Japan's exclusive economic zone, our reporter James Chater spoke to Eleanor Shiori Hughes. She's a Japan foreign relations analyst at Econvue in Washington, D.C.
Do you think there is appetite for more trips of this nature in Tokyo? And what other directions do you see relations between Tokyo and Taiwan developing going forward?
I don't anticipate that the momentum that Tokyo currently has in terms of sending lawmakers to Taipei will change in the near term. It's too early to say whether that will be the same case in the long term but at the very least, in terms of limitations, the United States and Taiwan jointly announced that they're going to launch or in the process of initiating trade dialogue. But that's something that, for example, that I don't anticipate Japan doing. One unique thing about Japan is that, unlike Taiwan and Australia at the very least, Japan has not yet, I'll say yet being the operative word, has not yet been subject to a big amount of economic coercion from China. And that's something that it's very, worried about because it depends heavily economically on the PRC.
What has the response been in Japan to China's live-fire drills?
The Japanese government officials and analysts who are based in Tokyo or watch Japanese foreign policy and security closely are quite alarmed by the fact that out of the 11 missiles that China fired, that 5 of them landed in Japan's exclusive economic zone for the first time. Shortly after Nancy Pelosi made her visit, there was a Japanese think tank that actually convened and had some sort of a war game that basically, one takeaway from that war game was that the Japanese don't have adequate resources or not going to do a good job at perhaps, evacuating its own citizens in the event of that China orchestrates a military contingency. So at the very least, I think they are thinking about that.
Have the Chinese actions caused a shift or an acceleration in terms of the level of urgency with which Taiwan is viewed or is perceived amongst Japan's politicians?
I would say to some extent, most definitely, especially because some of Japanese island assets, namely those Okinawa, like Yonaguni Island, are, for example, is only 110 kilometers away from Taiwan Island proper. Going forward, when high-level officials from Tokyo meet with their Chinese counterparts, not only will Taiwan's security feature more prominently in these talks, but I think the Japanese government will also continue to emphasize that just because China is acting more belligerent in multiple ways, whether it be economic coercion, military drills, or cyber or otherwise, Japan will still always be open to dialogue with China. And that could be perhaps not necessarily the most welcome news for Taiwan, because that could mean that Japan cannot then, on the other hand, open or on a bilateral basis have economic dialogues with Taiwan.